Hello and welcome to this tutorial for Blender on how to create and animate a Minecraft character. So here we're getting started and I'm just going to enable screencasting for you and the image plane so we can import images for references. Let's go to the folder that has the image file that I got from internet of the Steve. As you can see, the plane, we got the plane, but we cannot see the image yet. To do that, we need to open the side panel. You can press N to open it. And turn on, yes, that. We need to rotate it 90 degrees and scale it up. I prefer using standard. You prefer to use keyboard buttons for rotation, scale, and transform. So when I rotate, I press R and input digits. The same with scale and movement. But if you want to, you can use the lower buttons. You can see me pressing those buttons in the lower left corner. So I'm preparing this reference now so I can see it all the time while I'm modeling, because this is very important, and this a character that we've created. So also, I'm starting with creating the box, and because obviously the Minecraft characters are very boxy. And going to geometry edit mode, scaling it to the size of the head of the reference, trying to be as precise as I can. But even if we're not, it's not a big problem. So by pressing Shift D, I've copied that part of geometry, and then I'm starting to create a hand. First, we just need to capture the main proportions of the character, and then we'll start to go with the details. And at first, we need to just have placeholders for everything, so we know how the dimensions look in space. Trying to get as close as possible. B is using B, you can get the standard rectangular selection tool, but you have to be careful with those, because when you're selecting from front view, this is what you can get. Basically, the selection tool will only select what it sees, and the back vertices were obscured by the front vertices. So let's just undo that and start over. No idea what I'm looking for here. So we're moving the box to the location where the shoulder is and scaling it proportionally, because so we keep the right size. And now we're gonna have to stretch it down. Gotta be careful with that, because by default Blender has and the way the selection works in Blender is that you would not select vertices or faces that are obscured from the view. So by pressing B, I'm getting the rectangular selection tool. And as you can see, because I turned on this thing that allows us to select even obscure vertices, I got the results I wanted. But if I did not, this is what I would get. So keep that in mind, and try to check your model all the time for things like that, because if you keep on working on a model and for like 10 minutes, and only after that you notice that something was not actually selected right, that can result in some problems. I think we'll see me making that mistake in the future. So I'm creating the leg now. By pressing L, I've selected the whole arm, and copied it to the location of the leg. With L, you need to have your mouse over the geometry, and it's going to select all the parts of it. So I'm creating a new loop of edges on the head, so I can cut it in the middle, for the reason of adding a symmetry modifier on it, so that we don't, because the character is very symmetrical, we don't want to recreate what we've done on the left side on the right side. We have symmetry modifier for that, which in Blender is called mirror. So here we've got, just by applying that modifier, we just got the second arm and the second leg. But you keep in mind that you also need to increase the merge limit on the modifier, because these edges on the head, they need to connect to each other, and by default they won't be. So now let's get to the body. This is the only main part that is missing from that model. Let's get the placeholder for it. So I've copied the hand, but I still need to delete that inside face, the same way we had with the head. I'm switching from different ways to display the geometry. Usually I would use Z to just switch between shaded and wireframe modes, but in that case I always want to have the reference visible. I've accidentally turned on the snapping tool here, which I'll pretty soon I'm gonna figure out. Here it is. So I'm just moving it to the plane of symmetry, so that the modifier sees that these edges are close enough and automatically connects them to each other, so we don't have a visible seam on the area of connection of left side to the right side. You can see how it's like as soon as you get to that point, they just jump to each other and merge. That's what we want. And that's what the merge limit parameter controls, the distance. Here I'm setting it to extremely high value, just for the time being, so that we don't have to worry about that. You can see that now when I even move the edge that far, we still have the geometry, like it starts connecting very far. Not the best option though, don't do that. So we have the general placeholder geometry for the whole character right now, and we can start adding some details to it. Turned on ambient occlusion in the viewport so that I can see the shapes better, but depending on your GPU, that might not be the best option. It could start getting slower, but try it out. So let's start working on the face now. With the We're gonna add some edge loops so we can define the main areas of the face. Control R is adds a loop of edges here. And let's just follow the lines that we see on the reference image. Now let's define the eyes. Even though I'm creating some extra lines that might seem unnecessary right now. Like for the eyes, I've created a whole loop around the head. It is better to keep it that way because that keeps the geometry true to the basics of modeling. Let's put it that way. Because most of the all of the geometry is preferred to be based on rectangles or triangles. It's better to have it that way than just have a edge that ends in some weird place and then you get angles. And angles are faces that have more than four edges. Okay, let's get to the eye. We have the shape, and we have the polygons that are defining the eye. And let's extrude it inside by pressing E on the keyboard. Now, that what you see here is a result of me having this merge limit too high. So it was connecting vertices from a far distance. So we extruded it in, and we have the definition of the eyes. It's the same for the mouth, but because we need to delete the face that was on the symmetry plane, because we don't need that. I'm starting with the hair here, but I'm not sure what to do on the sides yet, so I'm gonna leave it alone, I think, for now. Or not. Basically, I want us to extrude the hair a little bit, so we get a little deformation on where the hair appears. And I know that on the normal Minecraft character, there's no such thing as these small extrusions and bumpiness, but this is due to the stylistic decisions and hardware and limitations of the engine. We're doing this not for a game. We're treating that as a model that we're doing for an animation. Yeah, so we could extrude it like that, but let's leave it alone, I think, for some time, because we can figure out what better to do on the sides of that character, and I don't have the reference for sides. Doop, 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 doop. So we're back to where we started. Let's not forget saving the file, of course. Yeah, so that doesn't look very pretty. Of course, as I said, I want to do something on the sides of the head.